Okay. So again, welcome everyone to the African American Seminar on June 15, 2021. Our topic today is alternative trends for building resiliency after COVID-19 with work, life, and balance. Okay. Dr. Regina A. Lane is a native of Oakland, California, and has had a fulfilling life, led from a very grounded spiritual family to her pursuits of healing work, beginning with her teaching youth in the Kemetic faith of Woodset Community Church and pursuing her way into ministry. During her service to the church, she managed to survive playing dual roles within her household as her former veteran spouse of nearly 20 years served 2 of 3 tours of Desert Storm and Desert Shield. After discovering her firstborn being bullied in school, Dr. Lane dived deep and homeschooled her 2 children, both gifted, gate, and special needs, while pursuing her first teaching credential above her bachelor's degree in psychology. Surviving her spouse's return home and personal rounds of PTSD, directed her course in taking a stand for children with Marion Wright Elderman's campaign, leading up to working with special needs population. During her passionate 20 years of dedication in serving the needs of families ranging from preschool to high school, included migrant farmers, homeless, and disabled students, Dr. Lane acquired her master's degree in special education. Dr. Lane battled with her overall well-being and personal healing work, gave her an opportunity to shed light in late 2016 through breaking her silence by collaborating in revealing her story, which was a call to deliver spiritual social impact, co-authoring Stand Up and Be Heard, Volume 2, 15 stories of fierce, bold, and courageous women living in their purpose. Her fearless academic pursuit, coupled with many life frustrations, helped Dr. Lane continue in her success and great accomplishments as an education specialist, serial entrepreneur of multiple businesses, author, international speaker, and recent graduate. In Dr. Lane's downtime, you will find her listening to an eclectic collection of tools, possibly writing poetry, Afro-Cuban drumming, gardening, painting, hiking, traveling abroad overseas, mentoring graduate students, coaching startup businesses, or tinkering with a recent design prototype, Mental Heal on the Go for Minorities mobile app to raise awareness and locate services. Dr. Lane's recent approved and published research in trauma-informed education training with cultural competency is a very timely topic. In her lectures, you will find a combination of uplifting ways to physically move as she threads words of affirmation and activities to awaken and tickle your spirit. The 5 key points that she will cover tonight is number 1, an understanding historical content trauma and framework, ecological system theory. Number 2, impact and influence of trauma and layers. Number 3, brain science, trauma and mental health shapes learning. Number 4, communication and attitude influences circumstances. And number 5, techniques and strategies for self-care. Now, I'm sure when Dr. Lane goes through a presentation that you will have questions. Please put your questions in the chat box and she will address them as needed. Okay.
All right.
Okay. So now we're going to have Libation by Dr. Regina Lane. Welcome. Dr. Regina Lane, and I'm going to get the plant and water to prepare for the libation.
Perfect. The purpose of our libations while she's preparing to get the plant and the water ready is to pay tribute and homage to our indigenous ancestors for the entire diaspora, in addition to the Americas, that our indigenous people are all celebrating the existence of being present. And for those who are no longer here with us, we want to make sure we can acknowledge their energy and the fruit that they've labored for us to be here. So we will do that by making a thought into your mind of who you would like to pay that tribute. I know we have lost a lot of fruit along the way of the Middle Passage into all of the rest of the diaspora. I also know that we have lost some folks from COVID. We have lost people that, you know, just between all these different journeys. And so we want to just take that moment of silence and reflection for your sake and for my sake today. I am acknowledging the reason I am here is because of the 4th generational grandmother who survived slavery. Her name is Susan Merritt, and I have her picture on the screen. I have her, that's why I have 2 screens today. I'm acknowledging her spirit. So I would like to go ahead and pour libation, and we will say Ashe to honor her spirit.
Okay.
Ashe.
Ashe.
And we want to go ahead and acknowledge all the folks that are in your mind and your heart that have lost their way, and we're waiting for them on the other side. We want to keep their spirit alive. So let's go ahead and give that whole second of breath in and pour that water dropping out to acknowledge their spirit. Thank you. Beautiful. And next we want to go ahead and prepare to welcome the energy of their spirit now that we've poured to remember their life with the libation of the water. We're now lighting the incense to welcome them into our space as well. And we're just sending that circle of life because we know that without them, we would not exist. We stand on their shoulders and all their greatness. And we thank you. We thank you, dear Master, Mother, Father, God, Creator, Universe. We thank you for their presence. And we are now going to go ahead and get into our seats and get nice and comfortable, clearing your space in front of you. I'm going to ask that you make sure that if you're looking to take notes, that you have some kind of device for writing and collecting your information, that you also have something to keep yourself refreshed. We will be getting into some meditation in just the next slide. So right after that slide, we are going to get some breaks in between, so you can be able to get to the restroom. And if you need to, make sure you mute yourself so we can get rid of all the background sound. As Bobby Waters did disclaim that we need to make sure we also put your questions into the chat box, but you can also take notes of things that you want to get clarity on or questions you want to have more specifically answered in this presentation that you would like to have shared. Please feel free to think about what those items are going to be. So now I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next slide. All right. So now here we're getting into this first exercise, and this is a very sensitive one. I want you to just use this visualization, or you can gently close your eyes as you're getting comfortable into your seat bone of your seat and your feet are planted on your ground in front of you. Think about your environment, that you are safe. I want you to go ahead and just look gently over to your right as we're just stretching our neck all the way to our right. Nice and comfortably, taking a nice breath in. And here we're just opening up our mental capacity to increase our awareness. And as we are in that space of awareness and getting clarity, that we recognize real from unreal, true from untrue. So we are not in distortion, that we are in full clarity, and that we are grounded as we're bringing our head back to the center, nice and slowly. We're turning our head all the way to the left, looking over our shoulder, reassuring yourself that you're still safe in this space. And we're opening up our feminine and masculine energy, and that we're in duality, that we're in harmony, that we're in peace and balance with this energy that is formulated within us. And we're going to bring ourselves back to the center nice and slowly as we continue to breathe. We're going to reach our hands all the way up, 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 like a big beach ball in front of us. And we're just going to give thanks and praise for the universe, allowing us to all be present. And that something so great, so wonderful and amazing is happening to us right now. Something so mystical and exciting is unfolding deliciously in front of us. And we are so humble, so grateful to be present. And we are just so happy to be here and to be able to take this moment in our lungs and our minds and our bodies to be healed and restored as we take in this information, and that we will not be alarmed by what comes in front of us, because we are stronger mentally and spiritually than we could ever have imagined. COVID, no COVID, we are present. And now we're going to just think about this picture that's in front of us as your hands are down at your sides, and look at this image and allow yourself to sink in. And you're on a journey, you're walking, and you have two bags in your hands. You have one bag that represents your past, and it is a very big, hefty garbage bag. And you've been carrying all your fears, your worries, and your doubts in that space. And as you are in that space, we're going to go ahead and just continue to feel the weight of that bag. And breathe in while you're holding the weight of that bag in your left hand. Just allow that bag, the heaviness of that bag, to just settle in to that left hand. And as that bag is weighing you a little bit to the side, you feel your left side kind of leaning into the weight of that bag. And then I want you to think about what's in your right hand as you're still walking, get close to that bench. You're not even at the tree yet. Now you have the bag in that right hand. And that bag is your future. And that bag is, again, your fears, your worries, and your doubts of all the unknowns. And you're holding the weight of that bag. I want you to just breathe into that pressure of that bag in your right hand. Feel that heaviness pulling you down on your right side as you are feeling the weight of that bag. Now I want you to get into a balance of feeling the weight of that bag. And all you got to do is make it to that bench. And just think about the steps that you're taking as you're carrying those bags. And you're taking slow, deep breaths as you're walking down this path. You should be at the second tree, and you're still breathing, and you're feeling the tightness in your shoulder and your neck, and you haven't let any of that weight go yet because you haven't made it to the bench. And now you're passing that second tree. And you're getting closer to that bench. And I want you to get to that back of that bench, and you're going to think about how comfortable it's going to feel to sit in that bench. Now you're walking to get into that seat, and you're sitting down, and I want you to just let those bags go. Let's start with the left bag and just drop and release the heaviness of that left bag, and feel that freeness of that weight in your hand being empty and being lifted from that weight and letting it go. And continuing to breathe. I want you to go ahead and take another good deep breath in and release the weight of that right bag. Let that bag go. Let it go. Let all the tension, the pressure, the anxiety, let it go. Let that bag drop gently onto the ground and feel the freeness of your hands. Feel the freeness of your heart. The chakras are emptying out as you're looking at the water, and you're feeling the coolness of the air, the beaming of the sun rays reaching across your face. And you're feeling a sense of relief, but you also feel a little bit of fear trying to sneak up on you. Soak up that sun. Soak it all the way in, all the way from your bottom, and bring it all the way up to the top of your base of your belly. And you're going to think about your spine and the reaching of that air coming all the way up your spine, to your shoulders, to the base of your neck, to the back of your head, to the crown of your temple. and relax and let go, and know that all your worries have been dropped into those bags. And I just want you to be at peace and to sit still with the stillness of calm and serenity, and know that you are safe. There's nothing or no one going to harm you in this space. And just be, and just relax. And know that those bags are going to be there when it's time to get up and pack up your way at the end of this journey. You'll be able to pick up those bags if you choose to, but the power of breathing is the power you have, and the power of choice is the power you have. Now we can go ahead and move on to our next slide, and open yourself up to seeing your mask. Each of us have a mask of things that have happened to us. And now we're going to open up our first activity. And this is to ask, what exactly is the big deal? Why is adverse child experiences, why is that important? Why do we need to know how our childhood impacts how we are as adults? So if you're muted, you can go ahead and unmute yourself to just, or jump into the chat box and give a response. You're welcome to write in here and give your commentary, or you can open up mute and give us a signal with your, you have an image that you can actually create an emoji that you can pick up a reaction to give a thumbs up or a hand so we can know that you want to respond, or you can take yourself off of mute. This is your opportunity to think about your childhood. And what does adverse childhood experiences have to do with why we are here today? Our government wants us to return back to work and back to school and act as if our mental health doesn't matter. And we have to safely get there, whether you are a caregiver, a parent, a college student, a grandparent, a guardian, whatever your role is, a retiree, you have a community to connect with. You have to think about your limits and your boundaries. And here we're not trying to push you to go back to any responsibilities, but we want you to think about where you fall into this whole experience of your childhood and where that impacts where you're headed from this point forward. Do we have any comments in the chat box for what is ACEs? This is what our presentation will begin with. If you don't know, we're going to be finding out. And since I don't see any notations here, okay, I do see something that just popped up here. Let's see, what do we have? Oh, we still have someone trying to get in and needs a correct number, so we can address that. I will go ahead and move on to the next slide. So here we have an opening activity, and this is to really assess what it is that we are as a community. What is our score? So ACEs is really based on experiences that you've had in your childhood that have may have been detrimental to you having a lot of successes, some blockage. And so we're doing here is a live active research. Okay, we do have a comment. I see the ACEs is provide a lens of how we view the world and the place that we're in it. That is a good commentary. Thank you very much. And here we're going to do a live actual research together as a collective. I'm going to be adding the link at the bottom of the screen here. I'm going to be adding that into the chat box. And here we're going to take the results live to understand the importance of the call to action. Our goal is to raise awareness through a social change. And the survey is anonymous, so no names or emails are required to participate in it. And I'm going to go ahead and take this link really quick and add that into our, let's see here, add this into our box. All right. Oh, that's wrong. Okay. That's a future part of the presentation right there. Okay. All right. I'm trying to get this in here. Oops. Please bear with me. Just. Okay. Okay, so you're going to be clicking on this link to participate in this live survey. And we'll wait for everyone to get in there really quickly. Let us know if you have any difficulties getting into this. The relationship and experiences, even those in our childhood, affect our health and our well-being. Difficult childhood experiences are very common. So here we're going to be able to tell if our experiences that are listed below, if they have any effect on our health today. And these may affect us also in the future if they're not present right now. This information will help us and even your provider when you further investigate the understanding of this, how to work together to support your health and your well-being. So the survey has been updated just recently by the California, our Surgeon General, Nadine Burks, and a clinical advisory committee for an informal assessing. And so the experiences in our childhoods are just one part of the person's life story. And there are many ways to heal through that. And so our instruction here is we have a total of 11 points, but we have 10 questions that we're doing right now. And so let's go ahead and jump in. Is everyone in? If you can give me a thumbs up, some kind of a emoji at the bottom to let me know that you are still here with us, or a thumbs up on your screen so we can see that you're here. Can you guys still see what I'm sharing? That's what I don't know. Are you able to see the survey?
No.
Yes.
Okay. You can
Okay,
see the survey?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I
Okay,
can
so
see it.
all you're answering is yes or no. And if you do not have a screen in front of you, then a piece of paper and you're numbering it 1 through 10, you can still be able to participate to see how you score. We will not be discussing your scores, but we will be discussing how we did as a community. We're taking the assessment together. So the first question is, did you feel that you didn't have enough to eat, had to wear dirty clothes, or had no one to protect or take care of you? Your answer is yes or no. Next question, did you lose a parent through a divorce, abandonment, death, or other reason? Yes or no? Did you live with anyone who was depressed, mentally ill, or attempted suicide? No or yes? You're just clicking the box after, because that pop-up should have happened on another screen for you to participate.
I'm not on the, excuse me, Sister Virginia.
Yes.
I'm not seeing what y'all saying. What I got to click on this link you put on the bottom of the screen?
Yes, there was a link that took you to a Google document. I can put this link in here again. I'll copy it and I'll place it in here again. And all you need to do is click on that, and that should let you enter.
Yeah, okay.
So you click on that, and that should let you enter the survey that we're participating in right now. It's in your chat box.
Okay.
And this is a Zoom form. I mean, not a Zoom form, it's a Google Doc.
What you say, double click on it?
You should be able to double click and it should take you to another window that will allow you to participate in it. Are you able to open up the survey? Is everyone into their own survey by any chance?
No, I'm not able to open it up.
No? Okay, let's see here.
Oh, something's coming up. Something's coming up.
Okay,
Yeah, I think I clicked on too many,
Yeah,
clicked on
Okay.
it too many times. I got a whole lot of rolling here. I got a whole lot of,
yeah. Because like I said, I guess we can reread it if you can't see it.
sure.
And then
Okay.
they can
Let's go
write
ahead.
down.
Yes, if you
Yeah.
do not have, the computer ability to participate, then I'm gonna go ahead and start with our questions that we're participating in the live survey. That is the results that we'll be discussing as a community. The first question says, did you feel that you didn't have enough to eat, had to wear dirty clothes, or had no one to protect or take care of you? Your answer is either yes or no. That's all we're answering is yes or no. The next question is, did you lose a parent through divorce, abandonment, or death, or other reason? Your answer is either no or yes. And you're clicking on that. The third question is, did you live with anyone who was depressed, mentally ill, or attempted suicide? Your answer is either yes or no. And in this case, what they did not account for is if your parents were divorced and you had one of the parents that were depressed, mentally ill, or attempted, they were in your household, does not mean that they have no impact on you, because we'll be finding that out later. If they didn't live in the same household and that was one of your two parents and they're not in the same household that you still had some engagement with, your answer is either yes or no. Our next question is, did you live with anyone who had a problem with drinking or using drugs, including prescription drugs? And your answer is either yes or no. Your next question is, did your parents or adults in your home ever hit, punch, or threaten to harm you? Your question is either a response of a yes or a no. Did you live with anyone who went to jail or prison? Yes or no? And this, again, the person, if they're in prison, obviously they're not in your household because they're in prison. You still would be able to give credit to that being a yes or a no. Moving on to the next question. Did a parent or child in your home ever swear at you, insult you, or put you down? Yes or no? Next question. Did you feel that no one in your family loved you or thought you were special? Yes or no? And then the next question is, did you experience unwanted sexual contact, such as fondling, oral or anal, vaginal, or intercourse penetration? Yes or no? And then the last question, which is outside of the survey, is, did you believe that these experiences affected your health? A lot, not much, or some? So you can actually pick more than one answer for that. And then you're going to push submit at the very bottom. And then that will give us some scoring to work on. And it will give us the score as a collective, and then we'll be able to view the score. And I'll be able to share that score when we come back from moving on to our next slide here. Okay, so let's see where we are. All right, so here now we're going to go ahead and take a mindful minute break. We're going to go ahead and get up and stretch, get to the bathroom, get some water in, and then we're going to go ahead and take a look and see what our scores turned out to be. So you guys can go ahead and can we get, Bobby, will you be able to put a timer on for 1 minute?
Oh, sure. I
Okay,
can do
great.
that.
Okay, perfect. And it looks like we have 10 people in the room. Okay, great. So this is an opportunity to go ahead and make any small adjustments.
Okay, you said 1 minute, right?
Yes, 1 minute.
Okay. It's
All
1
right.
minute.
1 minute. So you guys can go ahead and get up, stretch, move around, get to the bathroom, get some water. That was some heavy weight we just unpacked in a matter of minutes. So it's more like, yeah, that does feel a little uncomfortable. We just need to make sure we put it in perspective, and then we can be able to see how we scored as a collective. So we'll be able to take a peek at that. Let's see here. I don't know if you'll be able to hear this music if I'm playing it in the background. I had some music set aside just for now. Okay, here it goes. Can you hear it? Okay. Are we at that 1 minute mark?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, great. So at the very end here, I will make that link available. You're gonna have to mute for those.
We have a lot of background sound, so we need to get folks to go ahead and mute.
Okay, great.
I don't know what happened.
Okay. All right. So I don't know if it's because I have two screens going on or not. Right here, what we're going to look at is Dr. Folletti came up with a study as a particular scientist with a group collective that came together to basically review what they discovered with Kaiser and CDC. They were trying to figure out what was causing the problem with people dealing with weight loss. And in that meeting, what they found was that the folks that were coming to the program were doing successful, but they always fell off at a certain point. And what they discovered was that they don't, what was it that was keeping them from continuing after they got to a certain point of success? And so here they found out through connecting with CDC, they wanted to run a study to find out what were these elements that were leading up to the people who lose the weight and then they would gain the weight right back. And then what they discovered was that the participants of 17,000 that happened to be predominantly European background down in San Diego, California, that they had scored based on a large number of different discrepancies, and that there was abuse connected to a lot of the reasons that they were falling off, because the weight was coming back on as a sense of safetyness, and they kept that weight and they weren't able to get past it. So that is what the basis of the study was. And then the findings here in the state of California basically show that 61% of the adults have experienced it, at least an ACEs of 1 in 6. So that's 16.7% of the people here in the state have experienced at least 1 in 6 of a score of 4 or more in ACEs. And so it's very, very common that people are having some kind of emotional abuse background. And then it continues to descend based on the questions that we just discussed and going through that. So let's take a look and see how did we do as a community. All right. So out of the people who did participate in this score, this is where we came up with people's scoring and their responses. So as a collective, we were at least, oh, the median. Okay, here's our median. Our median was at least 6 points. The average was 6.2 out of 11 possible points. The 11th point doesn't really count. So that's already showing us that 60% of us on average have experienced some of these ACEs. And you can see that questions number 3, 5, 6, 8, and 9 were the most prevalent ones that had the higher scores from looking at those results that we just participated in live. And so, like, for instance, on that very first question, we saw that 80% of us said no to not having enough to eat. But when it came to divorce, it moved up to 60%. And then when it came to depression, it was 60%. When we got to drugs and prescription drugs, it was at 80%. And then it fell off when it came to being physically assaulted. That dropped down. That most people said no, they didn't have any physical harm. And then the same thing with prison. There was no parents with problems that put them into situations that were incarcerated. When we got back to the side of being mistreated verbally, the verbal abuse was at 60%. And then as far as being physically, did a parent or adult in the home ever hit, that came up at 60%. And then the very last one, everyone basically said they all did not feel like they were part of their family. They all felt loved. That is huge right there, that those who were able to participate, 100% of us said no, none of us did not feel unloved or unwanted in those households. But when it came.
Excuse me, Dr. Lane.
Yes.
I don't think our screen changed. Were you?
Oh, okay.
Because I was trying, I don't think our screen changed. I was trying to interrupt you.
Okay. Let me get you
Yeah.
to see that screen. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. This was us coming to deal with the survey response. Can you see the screen now?
No.
No?
Okay.
See, let me.
I see the gallery.
You see the gallery. Okay.
Yeah. Does anyone else see something different?
All right, let me see. Okay, I'll share the screen again. Okay. Thank you.
I see the screen.
Okay, now I see it.
Okay, so I was just going over the average that 60% of us have experienced some of these higher scores is where we came in as an average, as a median, as a range. And so I was just showing how those results reflected as far as the bars. And so this here, I can also make available to AABH to be able to have for, its own record of what the ACEs, the score looked like for those who participated in this event. There was nothing that links you to an email or a name, but it just shows you as a collective, how did we score? And it was just showing you if a person did not have anything to eat, only 20% felt that they experienced that. And when it came to divorce, 60% felt that way. The same thing with someone having depression, 60%. When it came to alcoholism or drugs and prescription drugs, is that 80%? And then when you get to ever being parents in their home being hit, beat, or what have you, only 40%. So the number dropped there, just as it did for the incarceration. Then again, for those who feel like they were insulted or put down, 60%. When it came to feeling hurt or physically being assaulted, that was at 60%. And as far as not feeling loved, this is where we as a community came in at 100%. No one did not feel loved in their household for those who participated. When it came to any kind of unwanted advances sexually, this here was only 80% did not, 60% did not feel that they were in that situation. And as far as those who believe, this last one really is not one that should be included, but 60% of folks said it, they only feel like some of it had an impact. It did not like devastate or destroy them as individuals. And so that was a pretty decent result in what we were looking at for having this collective experience. I'm going to go ahead and change screens and make sure that you guys are all getting the same screen with me. Okay, so you're all seeing the same thing here. The key findings, we just talked about that before actually looking at our results. And in comparison to where everyone in the state of California scored, we did pretty fair, but we were a little bit higher than before when it came to where we are as a people. So now let's see what we look like by ethnicity and race. And so because we are the African diaspora, we score a little bit higher because we've experienced a lot of these things as a collective on a global level. Okay, and this is only covering the age of 0 to 18. This does not include what you incurred after the age of 18. So this is how we scored compared to other nationalities. And you see when you get to people that have more than one nationality, their scores were the second highest along with Hispanic. And there's another set of evidence that's come out about the Hispanic population when they integrate to the US, what happens here. So now what does this all mean is that when you have a score of 4 or more, you have a higher tendency of a risk with your health with heart disease, alcoholism, lung disease, or depression. That's a score of 4 or more. If you did that testing on your own piece of paper of 1 through 10, then you would see where your health disparities could show up if you do not use any interventions. Now, what does that look like as a child? If you have 0, then you obviously are not touched. But for those, they said majority of us have at least a minimum of 1. But on average, we're at almost up to 4. And now that doesn't include COVID. That's just pre-COVID. And so those behaviors that they show here are involving a lack of physical activity. They're people that are seeking things outside of themselves, so they pick up these extra little habits. There's less momentum at work. There's not as much movement at work because you're in a sedentary. And you got to remember, traditionally, to our indigenous people, we were active people. And we've become less active as a result. And so because we're less active and we have these behaviors that are showing up now, this is actually very common in COVID right now, is where a lot of us have been because COVID, some people have been in 15 months of that space of being restricted, of social distancing. And then you got the vaccination and the fears and the concerns and the side effects, and we've lost a lot of people. And so we have a lot of physical and mental disparities that have happened. You have people that have picked up a lot of weight. They got, issues with their dietary issues that are going on. There's all these different things at the bottom of the screen. This information, again, is available on multiple websites when you type in ACEs. And now, because we just talked about all of that, we're going to go ahead and move into another movement. That's why I wanted to make this opportunity as interactive as possible. This here is called the warrior pose. And if you have space in your seat and you can actually get into a position, maybe sideways in your chair, you're gonna be lifting your hands up. You're gonna put one foot in front of you and drop one leg down to your side. And this here, we're gonna be lifting our arms all the way up, nice and slowly. And this here is considered a warrior one pose. And we're taking a nice clean breath, and we're just giving so much thanks and praise about where we are and where we've been, and just take that breath and drop our arms down to our elbows, to our shoulder length right here. And we're just gonna turn our torso to our left in your seat, nice and comfortably, if you can do that safely. And we're opening up our diaphragm, which is a great exercise to do before eating. And we're breathing in, and we're just giving thanks and praise for this energy that's in front of us and this knowledge and awareness. Coming back to the center, nice and slowly, making sure that you breathe. And we're going to turn all the way to our right, and we're facing each other. And you're facing your screen at this point, or to your right. Now you're just in this position, and you're breathing in and letting it go, dropping those elbows down. Okay, and wiggle those fingers a little bit, and move those toes around because they're just not getting no kind of love. Just go ahead and wiggle those toes down. We're gonna come right back to center. We're sitting back into our center, going back, bringing our torso back to the center and dropping our arms down at our sides. And we're gonna come right back into turning back towards our screens. And that was a quick mindful movement. And this is something that I want you to think about. You're going to see these patterns that I'm using to help you to reprogram what it is that you've been not doing to get out of where you are. So now let's look at the understanding of the historical context of trauma and its framework, the ecological system theory. Prior to the 1930s, when it came to our cultural views of exploring the behavioral health, they're limited because there were few practitioners representing us as individuals in a collective comfortably. So this being a problem, we didn't have as much resource in our community to really actually get extra help in understanding the trauma based on our scoring. We're not having those assessments within our own communities or even within our own homes. But if we've been doing these kind of assessments on ourselves since it came out back in the 1990s when the Folletti study came out, according to the Mental Health America, I put a scale of 13 to 23% of us collectively seeking professional help. We are on the 16% side, 16 to 17% as African Americans as far as seeking professional help. And many of us aren't aware of how to get those assessments or referrals or accommodations to better serve our general well-being, and are able to, because of that, we're not able to get adequate information. And so that is stepping outside of our comfort zone, because back in the day, it was our church, it was our family, and it was just the communities that we created within ourselves. And now, because our problem has gotten a little bit bigger than ourselves, it's time to have this kind of conversation, know what your score is, and be able to say, wow, if I'm at a score that is greater than 6, then I really should be thinking about what else can I be doing or considering alternatively to get past where I'm at. So now, how does this affect you as an adult? Because we looked at it from the child perspective. In the center here, you see as an individual, that's you right there in the middle. It doesn't matter what age you are. I don't care if you are a baby or a senior, you are the individual. But what impacts you and influences you is what's in your surrounding area. So once you step outside of who you are and you're interacting with your family, your spouse, you may have communal living. You have other folks that are in other rooms in your household. You got to think about their tensions and their devices and what they're bringing in and out of the element, whether they're on a phone. What they're consuming is not just a conversation. What they're consuming is not just a food. It's what they're putting into their thoughts. All this energy is shared in your space constantly. And as soon as you exit your home, now you're out in the community. You're looking at the school, you're looking at the church, your peers, what's going on at work, what's happening at the community center. what's happening, all that is outside. So you're bringing that outside into the family, back into yourself. So this is 3 layers. And then we're doing it on a larger level. We're watching the news and the media, social media platforms. All of that too is affecting the way that we regulate our emotional space. Like, for instance, I hear that there's things happening on TV through my peers and family association, and I'm just almost devastated because I can't digest all that. That's too much overload for me. I'm just trying to get through this part here. I'm just getting into the 3rd ring. I can't go outside that 3rd ring, because outside that 3rd ring, I can't control that. That's outside of me. So that's going to stress my levels up even more, especially if I'm already a caregiver or I'm a provider. Whatever my role is in the community, I'm stretching myself. And if you're talking about social norms, you're looking at racism, and you're looking at microaggression, and you're looking at what's happening to our brothers and sisters on the street. What those things I just said that is happening on the street is flooded in our media. So we're digesting that. It's just like the making of a slave. If you watched and you witnessed that generationally, you got another problem on your hand. So this is what Bronfenbrenner's theory was really about, was these influences within our community. They have an impact on us from outside all the way to within. And our biggest thing we have no control over is oppression. And oppression is also a state of consciousness as much as it is inflicted upon us. And that is about social economics. What we don't hear about is environmental racism. That's something that's new on the table. This is outside of my research, and I want to bring this to the table because we're most likely, as Indigenous people, no matter which region or which continent we are representing, we're more likely to live near contaminated air, water, and soil. And so you see the numbers here that 56% of our population live near toxic waste. I got to see that when I was in Namibia and in South Africa. The shanty towns are near the dump grounds, the landfills, and they're polluted. And these folks are bringing these environmental dump things and creating home structures from it, and do not know how contaminated it is. And then you see here that 95% of these claims of polluters are denied by EPA. And EPA is not just in America. This is all over the world that are actually regulating what's happening in the environment. Outside of that, you have nitrogen dioxide, which is coming from our factories and vehicles. And then you also have 2 times more of that in the it says here, without potable water and modern sanitation. So this is just a little side note from the nation that is giving us this information that we need to be aware of. This is all in the background. Like, this is the stuff that we're not seeing on the news. And today's water level definitely smell a little bit more harsh than usual here in Sacramento. I noticed that I can smell more chlorine than usual. And I was just washing my hands. I didn't notice it when I was taking my shower, but I did notice it when I was washing my hands. So back to this trauma and this social location. When the original study was put together, they were like, okay, so we understand that the higher your score, you have an earlier death. And then, we have all these burdens of the diseases that we're just talking about, and we have more options of, based on our lifestyles and how active or non-active we are, determines the health risk and the behaviors. Then we have, again, the social, emotional, and cognitive impairment. So it's like, the higher your score, the earlier you are to death. What they didn't factor in was something that came out in 2015. And this was out of Richmond, California. What they did not include was 2 more categories. This study was based on 42,000, or is it 70,000? I think it was between 42 and 70,000 participants in San Diego, which happened to be predominantly European. There is middle class lifestyle. They're not experiencing the same levels of microaggression, implicit bias, epigenetics, and the other social structures that are constantly happening, which includes the generational embodiment and historical trauma. Those things are not accounted for. And the rise that came up with this right there in the Bay Area, they're like, yeah, this is a cute little study, but what about these other things that need to be factored in? So let's look at where we are on this spectrum of disparity is based on poverty. And because we are stuck in limited opportunities, we don't have an equal playing field. And because we don't have an equal playing field, our mass media across all structures are forcing us to look at things that are very obvious, like racism, right? We see that on the news constantly. We see who's being attacked the most. We also see disparity within our politicians. We also see in our religious sectors. We also see it by gender biases. There's so many things that divide us to keep us focused on where the ball is. We're watching where the ball is landed, but we're forgetting about this part over here, which is our Maslow's theory, which is that we need to remember our basic needs. We need to get back to how do we make sure our basic needs are being accounted for? How well do we feel those things are being taken in consideration with our physical wellness, being safe, being loved, our esteem? And then our self-actualization is really about being our best. And how do we keep that level of creativity? What are we doing to continue to operate at our higher levels of consciousness? That goes back to what I said before about what we're consuming. And we're consuming things that are not necessarily healthy for us, they're toxic. And it goes back to the slide that I showed right here. So if this is in your environment and you're trying to get right here, that could take a while. Are there any questions so far as what you should be putting in the chat box and thinking about your comments and things like that? Now we're going to go ahead and move into another position, because I know I said a lot and I want us to stretch through this mindfully. And we don't want to be too overwhelmed is why I'm making these movements. So now we're going to go ahead and turn to our right in your chair, nice and safely. If you have space in front of you, just turn sideways in your chair. You're going to go ahead and put your right foot in front of you and drop your left leg to the side of your seat. And you're going to lift your right arm directly in front of you and then pull your left arm, if you can carefully lift your left arm up behind you. And think about your affirmation. I'm in balance right here and I'm trying to keep my balance. I'm trying to maintain my balance. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drop my left hand back to my heel of my foot, reaching my hand all the way up to the ceiling, like I'm trying to touch the ceiling and my chin is being pulled up, acting like something is pulling my hand up here, like I'm being lifted. And all things are possible. All this information is just to be informed, not to overburden me, that I'm raising my awareness. I'm paying attention to my environment. I'm breathing as I'm reaching for the sky, reaching for the stars, knowing that something great and something so incredible is just opening up to change my circumstance. I'm going to take that right hand and we're going to just slowly bring it all the way down as safely as we can to drop that hand down. We're lifting the left hand up. We're dropping that right hand down towards your ankle, reaching all the way up. And now your left hand is going up and you're looking back at your thumb. And I am in alignment with my assignment. And I know that because I can feel it in my core and nothing can stop or shape or destroy my mind and my spirit. It is so much greater than what is in front of me. Everything in front of me is temporary and I am present. I'm gonna start lifting up nice and slowly, bringing that right arm all the way up, turning your head back to your right, looking at your right hand in front of you. You should be back to a balance. Both arms are out. And you're gonna slowly taking that breath. And as you release it, bring your arms back down to your side, nice and slowly. And we're gonna turn ourselves right back facing this computer or telephone or whatever you're in front of. Take another deep breath in. And if you have any water nearby, go ahead and get a nice little swig, because again, you need to lubricate your mind and your body after taking all this information. We need to remember that we are part of this environment. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for taking that breath. Thank you for taking that moment to stretch. Thank you for getting that water in. Let's move on. And now let's take a look at what else can be impacting and influencing this trauma. As you see this man's head dropped and he's got his prayer beads, you know, we're in the biggest amount of stress than we've ever experienced, not just as individuals, but as a huge collective. More than usual amounts of anxiety and depression are just circulating around us constantly. And if you're sharing space with someone else in your household and you don't even know how to address them or help them because you don't know what those behaviors are, as we just took that assessment, we don't know how much baggage people are showing up in our lives. And this includes our children. When they're going back to school, they're bringing in and out constantly something. Even if you're a caregiver, a grandparent, these people are bringing things in and out. They're bringing energy. And that's a nice way to describe it. They're bringing energy in and out of your environment. And you're on defense and you're protecting and trying to keep everything safe and calm and balanced. It's a lot of work. So here, we're going to look at this image. And you see 3 levels here of a woman. And you see in her belly, she is a parent. And so genetically, we have something that we are projecting and giving with or without our efforts. And it's based on how we are taking that experience in. So in my research and what's coming out the pipeline is very recent information is about epigenetics and trauma. And that was mentioned earlier when I was showing you the diagrams. And epigenetics is really based upon genetic marks that register in a person's genes from previous generations. This is toxic stress. It produces a chemical response based on varying experiences of trauma over time. Traumatic experiences can have such a great impact on children because they have little control over what happens, unlike adults. An example of epigenetics trauma would be historical and generational trauma like slavery in the United States. And that came out in 2019. So for epigenetics to really change, to really be inherited, you have to have rewritten every generation. And right now, what we have in front of us are great grandchildren and beyond, and we don't know how clearly that damage is affecting them genetically, but we know those markers are there. So if you watch The Making of a Slave, and that went on for 4 or 5 generations, we're still clearing out that. And they're saying that in this next slide, they're saying that before, in the past, when a mother is pregnant and the 2 parents come together, that is a fresh slate for that baby coming in. But now they're shedding more light on understanding whether or not the parental epigenetic markers are influenced by offspring's health, disease, susceptibility. This is a new term called transgenerational epigenetics, about the inheritance and the interuterine exposure. So whatever that parent has been exposed to on both sides. See, in that last image, I just showed you the mother. We're not even factoring in what the father has incurred and what he's bringing, because he's the planting of the seed. The mother is carrying, but he's the planter of the seed. Without that seed, that egg does not get fertilized. So here you're bringing these two beings together, and now you have that whole germination that's occurring, and that all happens scientifically. And so you can either choose to stick with the narrative or rewrite and break the cycle, is where we are when you look at maybe the 3rd generation and 4th generation down. Then you start becoming more selective in your process of who you're picking as your mate. And so if you can give an emoji on, do you feel like we are getting closer to that, then you're giving a thumbs up. If you feel like we're still stuck, then you're giving a sad face or a thumbs down. go ahead and get into your reactions. Or you can give me a thumbs up on your screen or a thumbs down on your screen. Do you feel like we're making any progress? Where do you think we are here? Do you think we're closer to this space now where we're being more selective? Okay, I think we have a chat here in the box. Let's see what we got here. Okay, that was an older message. Okay. All right. So please feel free to put your comments in the box. Now, believe it or not, our environment really does matter. And here is all the things that are happening around us that are constant. And even if you're not taking it in, it's still in your environment. It also, what should have been included in here is our cell phones. What should have been included in here is our televisions, our laptops. We're still soaking up so much energy, even the blue rays as we're sitting here right now. If unless you set settings on your phone and on your computer to reduce the number of blue rays, then you don't know how much of that exposure, by the time you go to sleep, you're wondering why your mind is still so fired up. It's because, again, we're soaking up so much of it, but we're not getting as outdoors as much. And now we're going into a state of shock as we're exiting and going back into work and to school. And we don't feel as protected or as safe as we've been in this lockdown state of condition that's been on a global level. So what we need to look at here in order to break some of the cycle of trauma is to understand how it actually works. We have evidence that when you have punishment, punishment brings on trauma. And when trauma incurs, we get emotional and psychological damage, and then we have behavior problems. Oh, I misspelled that. Okay, so then that then becomes again part of the cycle when it hasn't been broken. And then that cycle continues upon another cycle. And then what happens is 4 and 5 generations later, we're still responding the same way 4 or 5 generations did when it came to handling basic affairs. So now we're going to get into another movement because movement is really important here. And this is what's setting us back with getting back to work or getting back into chores or tasks of feeling normal within our own environments. And that we are so sedentary because we've been so locked down, we're forgetting to move, just like we're forgetting to breathe. So now we're not going to do this this full twist because some of us have limitations with our arms and our legs, but we're going to go ahead and turn to our left in our seats. And as you're turning sideways in your left, you're going to go ahead and take your right leg and cross it. If your legs are tender, then you're crossing your ankles. If your legs are fine, then you're just going to cross your leg like you normally would. Just rest your right leg on top of your left leg. And then we're going to take your left hand and put it up under your right arm. So it's almost like you're reaching yourself from underneath your arm. You're going to take that right hand and just give yourself a nice hug. You're just hugging yourself right now. You're giving yourself a hug and just know that we are fine, that we are whole, that we are complete, that we are enough, and that we are anchored. And you can remember this when you are feeling like things are getting out of control, that you can just get into this position and know that you can do this at any given time and just breathe in. And when you take that next breath in, I want you to take that next breath in and you're going to be lifting your arms up. Continuing to breathe, lifting those arms up, those elbows up. And then just let it go. And just drop those elbows gently right back down to center. Just drop it, dropping your head down, tucking your chin in. And releasing your arms back at your sides, dropping your legs back down to the floor. And you can rotate and do that to your left. And usually we always want to do the meridians of keeping that evenness. But this is also opening up your hip bone a little bit, so you can stretch out your hips a little bit while you're resting your left leg on top of your right leg. And now you're going to take your right arm and put it up under your left arm and just wrap that hand over your shoulder and just give yourself that nice good squeeze. How often do you give yourself a hug? How much do you tell yourself how much you love yourself, that you are being successful, just breathing and being present, showing up for you right now? We're going to go ahead and take a nice clean breath in, lifting our elbows all the way up. Continuing to breathe. And I know something great, so wonderful, is going to just line us all up and keep us in harmony, keep us in rhythm, keep us anchored, keep us to our truth. And releasing those arms right back down to the center, releasing your arms completely from each other, undropping that hug, releasing your legs back to center, turning yourself back to the front of your screen. Thank you so much. If you want to get a swig of water, you're welcome to do that. And we're going to go ahead and move into the brain science. Now we're starting to get to the nitty gritty right here. This is what is really not being talked about. We're being forced to get back to school and back to work, but we haven't unraveled the way that we are seeing everything in perspective. And so the way we're thinking is shaping the way that we're learning. So let's go ahead and take a dive in to that space in our mind. So trauma changes the brain. And this just came out this year because everyone is racing to the clock to understand where we are with our health. So all these things, all these different factors are affecting. And so if you look at that brain nice and crystal clear, you'll see the three parts of the brain of the limbic system that are mostly impacted here. And what we're talking about is our health, our appetite, our sleep. All this changes when trauma comes on the scene. So I was really excited about this research and this topic today because I wanted to give you something that is in real time. And what we have here is that the psychological trauma is not only mentally and physically exhausting, it can also have long-lasting effects on the victim's brain. They're showing studies that the brain can shrink based on trauma. I just recently had some MRI done because I was concerned about memory loss. Like, I can't remember where my keys are. I can't remember where my phone is. I can't remember where I parked my car. And that's not all at one time. That's over in a period of time. That might have been in a week, or it might have been in 2 or 3 weeks. And it gets you a little anxious because you don't understand what it is that's controlling those emotions. And so how we're handling it, how we're processing it, our minds are more overactive now than ever before. And so we're feeling and we're experiencing traumas that are different than the original traumas. And that's causing something called an amygdala hacking. And so if you look here at the prefrontal cortex, this is where our attention, concentration, and focus is. And when this is jeopardized, just like the amygdala, what we just read, our emotional regulation and reactivity, that means our impulses are more delayed. We're not responding as quickly as we normally would, so we have more accidents. And so people aren't paying attention as much as they used to because we've been on pause for so long. And so our reaction times are going to be a little bit slower. I just had a small fender bender not even a few weeks ago. As a matter of fact, this week will be 30 days ago that someone backed into my car and I had honked twice and I was only halfway out of the parking spot. And the person continued to just back up as if I wasn't even in the parking lot. So our learning and our memory is impacted because the way we're processing everything is being delayed. So now we're unpacking those changes to the brain. And we just talked about the prefrontal cortex and how it's becoming more weakened. So now we have more chances of chronic stress that comes with this. They're equally together. So now it's weakening our ability to reduce and our active firing of our neurons that impact our emotional regulation. So again, if you're not getting enough water, you're not doing enough exercise, you're not doing anything to get oxygen to your brain, you're slowing that brain process down, which is causing the impact as a domino effect. We're looking at the memory and the hippocampus, which Dr. Hafiz says that impacts the trauma. It makes this part of the brain difficult in preserving other memories, reducing the size to damage from constant anxiety and stress. So the solution here, because you're like, okay, you just said a whole lot. Now, what's the solution to this? Well, it depends on your type of trauma. And that's why we took the assessment earlier. The more your levels are, the higher your damage could be. But that's why it's important to seek that qualified mental health professional so you can work out a treatment plan like therapy. Medication can also be meditation. But if you are on medication, that medication is to help you get back to a baseline. And you got to watch your body, because your body's going to give you messages which compromises your digestive system, which compromises your bowel system, which compromises your sleep and your eating patterns. All that's going to be the factors that you have to notate what those factors are and how your body's responding, because it's something that my beloved father would say is the medications that were created were not necessarily made for us. So our bodies and our DNA are responding differently to these medications, where people are having more adverse side effects that are bringing on more health issues than they started out with, like diabetes, hypertension, high blood pressure. And some medications are actually stirring up that pot. So now we're getting closer to our wrapping of the last two components. And this here is looking at communication attitude. This also influences the climate. And that climate is in your environment and outside your environment, based on the rings that I showed you earlier about that ecosystem. So your mental health is influenced by how you address things, whether you do it verbally or non-verbally. And these are great takeaways. You think about re-entering into the workforce, or even if you're already back at work and you're still trying to figure out, how do I address when I'm not feeling comfortable? When you're having lack of diversification in your workspace or your education institution, how your projections of your beliefs are illustrated with your behaviors. And those aren't just your behaviors, the behaviors that you're taking in from your peers at work and your peers at school. So their microaggressions may be invisible because they don't see themselves acting it out. That includes white fragility and also white privilege. These are topics that are starting to come up that are hard to talk about when you've already been so indoctrinated to, we just have to put up with it or we just quit. And we don't have that stability and security when we have oppression in front of us. And we see ourselves as being a victim, when we have to change that narrative of how we're responding to the situation. So let's take a quick look at that. Oh, did I move too fast? Okay, there we go. So here is another piece to think about when we're looking at trauma and how our attitude communication is, when we look at COVID and how those are all interconnected. And so what we need to look at, I see these as resources to take into your workspace or the environment you currently live in. And that is, if you're in a work environment that is not diversified, then that is a problem that needs to come to HR, and it needs to be brought to their attention how they're handling more cultural relevant responses to handling problems. Because again, that medication I talked about is not one size fit all. It's the same case with problem solving, that culturally we all respond to situations differently. And that's not factored into our HR. So the question that you should be asking your HR or your employer is, so what are we doing to become more diversified? What are we doing to become more culturally relevant and being inclusive in our work setting? What are we doing to build more safety and trust so we're producing less toxic, stressful environments that are hazardous? Because if you're coming out of COVID and returning back to work and school and they haven't built safety and trust, then now you're going to be in overload. Your brain is just so fired up, it's not going to have enough time to really respond. So you're going to have more situations that you cannot calculate in advance on, because you're so drained from being in isolation, and now you're coming back into an environment with a lot of unpredictableness. You can't bring those same old behaviors back. we have to be more accountable now. So we have to examine our relationships and how those are fostered. And that includes ourselves and people that live within our circles. And then goes back to what we talked about with communication and our attitude, how we're communicating and miscommunicating and misunderstanding because the way we're perceiving what's happening in front of us. You have to take down the facts. And so as we get ready to do another movement, this is my favorite one. It's the child pose in a seated position. The reason I'm bringing us into this movement, because we're going to be getting closer to our wrapping up shortly. And we're going to talk about some strategies and solutions after we get out of this movement, is that movement is so key. It's how, again, how you're getting in and out of those perspectives of what is and what is not in front of you. So we're going to turn to our left in your seat, nice and smoothly. If it is safe for you to be able to do this position, then you can. If it's not, then you can use your lap to rest your head, or you can use your tabletop and just give yourself that movement to drop your head down. If it is safe and you do not have vertigo, you do not have high blood pressure or hypertension, I do not want anybody getting lightheaded by bringing their head down. What we're going to do is take our hands all the way up, reaching all the way up, nice and slowly. If you have shoulder issues and you're dropping your elbows down, if you have elbow and shoulder issues, you're dropping your hands down to your knees and you're resting both your palms of your hands on your knees. And you're just going to let your belly be the gravity that pulls you all the way in, bringing your elbows in, tucking them into your belly. And you're just coming down forward. Your feet are flat on the ground and you're coming down nice and slowly to your most comfortable position, and you're remembering to breathe. And as you're getting here, I want you to let your hands drop down to your feet. And we're going to go ahead and ball those hands up. We're going to start tapping the base of our feet. You're just tapping the base of your feet. Just continue to tap. Feel the coolness of your feet. Let your toes wiggle a little bit while you're tapping. You're still tapping. You're tapping to your shins. You're tapping on the outside of your calves, continuing to tap. You're tapping to your kneecaps. You're tapping your upper thighs from your knees all the way to your upper thighs. You're tapping at your hips. You're tapping your lower back to the base of your back. You should be sitting up right now. You're tapping your spine. You're going to tap on the sides of your rib cage. You're tapping your bellies. You're tapping it all in one big circle around your belly. And this is energy that is just stored in here that's not moving. You're tapping to your chest. You're tapping, continuing to tap. You're tapping out. You're tapping out all this energy that's bottled up in here. You're tapping to your right hand to your shoulder. You're tapping the inside of your arm to the palm of your hand. Flipping your hand over, and you're continuing to tap. Tapping the back of your arm all the way up to your shoulder, continuing to tap. Tapping the side of your neck. You're going to go ahead and switch hands out to your left hand. You're continuing to tap. You're tapping your right shoulder all the way down. You're tapping all the way down to your wrist, tapping the palm of your hand. Flip your hand over, tapping the back of your hand, tapping up the back of your arm all the way up to your shoulder. Tapping the side of your neck, bringing both hands to the back of the neck. It's another emotional warehouse besides your belly to get to the back of the head, tapping the back of the head all the way to the top of the crown of your head, continuing to tap. If you don't have anything on your face, tap on your face. You can control your emotional space really quickly by tapping on your face, tapping your throat. This is your chakra of communication. You want to unlock that. And when you're emotionally feeling depleted or you're angry, you can tap right here and you can stop those emotions immediately. Bring your hands back up to your face. Continue to tap. Tapping above your eyebrows, top of your head, and stop. Stop your hands, open your hands up, and you're just going to brush it off. You're letting it all go. You're brushing it all off. One more time, brushing off the top of your head. Brushing off your face, nice and slowly. brushing off your face, letting it go. Brushing off your shoulders to your hands, brushing it off. You're letting it go, letting all that tension out, letting it go. Releasing all that uneasiness, brushing off your chest down to your hips, down to your knees, brushing your chest down to your hips, down to your knees, letting it go, brushing it off one again from the chest down to your hips, down to your knees, brushing off from your knees down to your feet, brushing your knees down to your feet once again, brushing your knees down to your feet, and allow your hands to just rest there. Allow your stomach to just rest on your belly. You're laying your head flat onto your belly as comfortably as you can. If you want to fold your hands, you're welcome to do that. And I want you to just listen to the sound as I open up those areas. You're just going to breathe there for about 6 more seconds. Continue to breathe. One more breath in. Continue to let that energy just soak in, letting it go, and bring yourself up nice and slowly back into your seated position. Slowly get back into your seat, feeling your seat and your seat bone. Go ahead and get some water to put back into your body. We gotta lubricate our bodies. Give ourselves some love. And we're gonna go ahead and now look at all the strategies to get us to our next space, the techniques that we need to build resiliency. How do we do that with self-care? And as you see the mandala and you think about getting back to your center star player, you can't do that without self-care. You have to remember that that self-care is so critical to be able to make it through where we are right now. Otherwise, you're gonna get left behind. Resiliency building is much more of a strength-based thinking. It's an approach to addressing resiliency. It refocuses on the victories and the successes over the outcomes, while building up value to redirect feelings of negative defeat. And so here in this case, which is this just came out recently, as in this year. If you look over here to the bottom of this right screen, Harvard University, they put this together to kind of show us about the fulcrum. And the fulcrum is us as individuals. We're sitting here in the fulcrum and we're weighing all these different struggles in our lives. We have good things that are constantly in front of us, but we're overweight and stretched and taxed by the things on the left side that are depleting us. And they're constantly happening. Like, we have people that are losing their homes, not able to pay their bills, that are not having access to food. They're witnessing more violence than usual in more than one way. That includes video games, right? That includes the social media network, what we're watching on the news, all these different streams our children are soaking up, and they're overtaxing the mind until they become stagnated, that they don't know how to react to when a real crisis happens. Or they may be on the flip side, where they may actively have the brain fired up, and then they have less of the pieces to have that balance of the compassion, because they are less reactive or maybe more reactive. It just really depends on each person's chemistry. Not everyone is exactly the same. So then when you look at this next chart going right above it, this is right before COVID also. What we have here is, how do we shift from the negative outcomes of losing all these different things? We had closed schools, we have loved ones with COVID, job losses, physical distancing. All these things are so heavily burdened and weight. And then we're trying to also balance where we are with unemployment benefits for those who are receiving some kind of a stipend of some sort, maintaining a stable housing, and even childcare, which is a very expensive piece. Where we are headed and trying to get to is this bigger picture right here. What we need are more resources. And the only way we're going to get that is by responding like we are today, you showing up today, taking an opportunity to listen is not just for yourself. It's like each one of us as an incubator get to take this back to our communities and being able to be a part of that solution. So how do we reduce those sources of stress? We have to find within our networks, within our communities. We have to learn how to lean on and also how to ask for help. Today, I was just reading a message from a young lady with multiple health issues, and she was saying she's without work and without medical, and she's battling these health issues, and she was asking for any kind of help. And if you weren't able to help, even with your prayers would be something that lift up her burden. And so I said, you know, as much as I would like to help, how can I help make sure you got the paperwork submitted correctly? So that was my way of being able to show that support. How can I use some of my intellect to give back to someone who is struggling with least amount of resources? And then she shared her highlight that she did get some help on getting the papers completed today, and she's looking forward to getting some victories. And then she showed me the herbal supplements that she's taking as a loose tea and wanting to share her medicine with me. You know, I was like, oh my Lord, you know, this is incredible. But we have to have the conversations. We have to have the courage to ask for help. And I let her know how proud I was of her for having the courage to ask for help as a millennial, you know. And so in getting that courage and finding that conversation and knowing that building those relationships is how we get those services out there to each other, by sharing that network. So based on the Surgeon General, the latest takeaway is these are some basic stress busters that we should be incorporating throughout our day. And this is for the entire family. It doesn't matter what age you are, you can implement this into your life. I am now down to, for every hour of the day that I'm active, I'm focusing on at least 1 solid minute of just full breathing and just focusing on meditative breathing. The movement, we just did some physical exercises, and that was just sitting in our chair. If you're in a stationary work, how are you breaking up your day to get that movement? And I just showed you how you can get some simple movement in the course of us sitting here for a lecture of over an hour, and the time has gone by rather quickly. And now when you get to bed, your mind isn't all wound up because we did something to stretch your body out. And you got to look at, you know, how you're keeping your nutrients in, your vitamin supplements, how you're taking care of your mental health, which can also be through mindful practices and also getting actual care out there in the community. And here's something that I wanted to really, I put this together today because I really want to make sure you have something more to take away than just a bunch of conversation. And this is about energy. And it's about being your own hero and rewriting your own story. And I thought, well, what happens when the unexpected shows up? You have to ask yourself, am I ready to talk? And if you're not, don't force yourself to have that conversation. And these are not in the exact order. I just put them down as quickly as I could to be able to share. But you have to be willing to listen when you are ready to talk. So when you're ready to listen, know your triggers before you enter that space. If you do not know your triggers in that space and you don't have that awareness, don't have that conversation, because then you're going to heighten your stress levels, and it's not worth the conversation because you're going to be stuck in the defense mode. So don't freak out. Remember that, you know, you can create your own mental health plan, but most people are not ready to talk about mental health and racism. And today we just took a little tiny edge off the surface of it. There's so many layers below all of this. And I think that should be the very first step, is to seek a partner or accountability partner before taking any steps. So you're not going through this alone, that you are able to talk to someone that you can trust, that makes you feel safe. You can do that through your immediate network, through your small circles select families that won't put all your business out in the street, or maybe somebody at the church that you know that doesn't know all your business, but you're only going to give them a surface or a sprinkle of what you're dealing with. If you're at work, then seek out your HR and make them accountable, and be willing to take the steps to be in the opposite direction. Because usually we'll show up with the problem, but not talk about how, or show up to do the opposite of what it is that's being dished out to us. So I wanted to make sure you know what your habit is that you're creating for yourself. The habit is to be humble, attentive, brave, inspirational, and tireless is just a state of mind. We got to work on how do we shut our minds down more often than usual, because we're all powered up. And if you're like most of us, you're awake 16 hours out of the day. How are you using 8 to 10 of those hours is just getting ready for the matrix if you're stuck on a job and trying to make ends meet like most of us. And if you're not, then you're on the opposite side. You're trying to balance out how you keep everything in the flow so that you're not in a deeper, desperate situation because the cost of living is going up. Now, what do you do for those who are around you that are going through trauma? Because there's so many different layers. There's at least 3 layers of trauma. You have people that are on the low end from maybe 0 to 1 scale of trauma. So their stuff is lightweight. So yeah, they may have missed a phone bill today. No big deal. But for those who are in bigger situations where they're housing insecure, food insecure constantly, that instability creates more instability. It trickles down to other parts. This here is another slide I'd be more than happy to share the links for. And I'm sure, Bobby, you can't wait to get a cheat sheet of all these links that I've shared today with African Americans for Balanced Health. How do you really get through supporting those that are around you is to take care of yourself first. You have to model what it is that you want to see in others. You have to speak truth into your life, into your existence. You have to be willing to forgive so that you can heal past wounds. You have to be willing to do that mirror work. There's just, the list goes on. I mean, there's journaling, there's music, there's prayer, there's meditation. Get into healing circles. There are racial healing circles as well. I mean, that's just a whole nother conversation by itself that we can continue to have future conversations on. And so I was looking to show you something about the iceberg theory. Let's see if I can click on the link for this, because I thought it was a really good piece to share. And I'm not sure it's gonna let me get in there, just like I thought it would. Okay. All right, well, this here was basically, let's see if I can stop sharing on this side and get to another piece. Okay, let's see. Minimize that. Okay. Now I might be able to get, sorry for the technical delay here. There we go. Oh, there we are. I actually saved it. Question is, can you see my screen is the question. Let's see, how can I make sure that I am sharing the screen? Okay, here we go. Perfect. So to wrap up here, this cultural iceberg model was created to kind of help us understand that where we are as a culture is like as a society, we are always in one space or another that is visible or invisible. We're either above water or below water or a portion of it. It's always shifting, right? And so what does that mean when you look at the iceberg is that it's about the internal and the subconscious, and part of that culture is below the surface, and society includes some of those beliefs and values that are thought patterns that underlie behavior. And so here, as you can see, we have the internal versus the external. And this here is the major differences between consciousness and unconsciousness and culture. And so what we have to do is consider changing the way we're responding to what's happening to us in our environment. And we can only do that by sending it, the higher vibrations and frequencies that we're giving to ourselves. But if you're not taking care of yourself, you can't send that projection of love and light outside of you unless you are doing the change from within. And you have to see it as a global collective. Like when you focus on the homeless and you see them homeless, maybe you should see what it feel like if you were giving them the keys to move into their place. So you're witnessing them get the keys moving into their place. Now you're shifting it on not so much on the scarcity. And because we are the top state in the nation of 130 to 150,000 of people that are actually homeless, over 50% of them happen to be people of color. And now that we are being forced to get back to work and people are going to be losing their mortgages and their homes and things like that, our projections are going to be even higher on where this plays out until our culture changes as a collective, as a society, where people can have more compassion. Thank you very much, Anna. I see your notation down here. I know that we have so much to be said about all of this, and I just wanted to share this because we have to change it from within as a collective in order for that to shift. Because if we just focus on the negative of what they're giving to us, all we're going to keep seeing is the negative, because we're getting stuck into what they want us to see. And if we can see within ourselves that there's more wholeness, like the old Pepsi commercial, even I'm not a Pepsi fan, you would see people holding hands like we're going to make this a great world, like we could actually get there, but we have to visualize it first. And so that takes a lot of shaping and conditioning, but I think a lot of us are leveling up to get there. It's just having the discipline to be able to get there. So now the fun part, which is to make sure that your feedback is included for those who didn't have much to say or participate in this conversation. It was a lot of information being shared. I'm going to put this link in the box here to give you an opportunity to give your feedback on this lecture, because I think that we do need to have more conversations, and I would love to be able to sit down and have more of those conversations, so it's a little bit more engaging than what I started out with as a vision. But I wanted to make sure that there were some takeaways, and so this survey should be in the chat box. And it can also, the option is to include your name, and the option is also to include your email for future correspondence. So if you want to have continued conversations, continued workshops that will, be available in lieu of the African Americans for Balanced Health, as I was sharing about doing seated yin yoga with trauma-informed education, that all these things are available within our own connection of having these conversations. So I just want you to see what that survey looks like. It's pretty short and sweet. The first few questions are all the first two are optional. But you pretty much cannot go to the next screen until you've at least identified where you're from. So I know who participated in a regional level. And that pretty much puts me at the end of where I wanted to be in this conversation. So now we can open up for some questions. And
yeah, well, first of all, I just think that was fantastic. Thank you so much. And this is a topic, it's so funny because this is a topic now they're addressing more at my job at the state level. They're having more stress workout. You know, they're talking more about getting out, getting some sunshine, moving. And you really brought it home when these mental health go untreated, it really does affect your health.
Yes.
You know, it really does affect your health. And anyway, because I know we just have a few minutes, because I can go on and on, but I just want to say thank you so much. And I know we're at the end, and it's a wonderful presentation. But does anyone else have anything they would like to share? You know, so because I do, if no one, I do, but I want the attendees to go first, of course.
Well, I would just like to say I really enjoyed the presentation and the breaks that you incorporated with the stretching and incorporating physical movement was really, I think it kind of sets you up for the next portion that you were going to present. So
Okay.
I enjoyed that part of it. Thank you so
Awesome.
much.
Thank you. I really appreciate that feedback. That's really important to me.
Oh yeah, I enjoyed the presentation, Dr. Lane. A lot of information at one time. I mean, sometimes I think that's information overload. I think you can break it down into 3 parts. I especially like the part, I like to study the frontal cortex, the amygdala you're talking about. I think that's important to understand how the brain works.
Yes.
And so I know you try to get all the information in, but yeah, I like culture. I like talking about culture too, because I think everything is balanced within the culture. And I think people, I think we don't understand the function and the purpose of culture as a whole. Well, I'm not no expert at it, but I'm saying the function and the purpose of culture seem like it would solve a lot of problems. We're almost how Dr. Obatashaka said, we're between 2 cultures. We're dealing with European culture and African culture, and it's creating a lot of confusion. To me, it's creating a lot of confusion. Why don't we just practice our stuff? But I like all the movements and the exercising, and I'm learning. So that's what you're saying. That's about getting the energy out the body, balancing the energy, all the movements. Yeah, I need to definitely learn more about that and the meditation and
that's an important commentary you made, because I find that when you're doing those breathing pieces with the movements really slow, then that is meditation by itself, is making the movement and the breaths. If you notice, there was no rush. The goal was to go in your slowest state so that you can honor every single portion of the experience.
Okay.
Thank you for that feedback, Damani. I really appreciate that. I would love to have some continued roundtable conversations, even if that was a future, and just to break up one piece and say, hey, we really want to continue to have this as it's just a casual conversation, set aside a dinner hour to just eat and chat, to break it down. I'm really welcoming that opportunity for sure. I love these conversations, and it was a lot, because I mean, this is a hot topic and there's so much to be said. And that's why I'm thinking after this, I will definitely, for those who have done the survey, put your information in there, then I can make sure you have all that that information to go with those next steps, and getting a cheat sheet together for African Americans for Balanced Health, so that folks can say, okay, so if I am to unpack this, how do I unpack it safely? You know, like creating that first aid kit.
Yeah. And I do want to share like a personal story, because my father was alcoholic. He was not abusive, but I remember all the, well, I guess, all the embarrassment and just a lot of stuff that came along with that. And as I grew up and started getting into relationships, I found out that my tolerance level was higher to BS because I grew up with it. I was used to shutting it down and pretending like it was not happening. So, and then till I end up going to workshops like this, a lot of stuff came up and I had to give my permission, I had to give myself permission to let that go. Just something as simple as that. And you're correct, Roxy, with the movement and moving the energy, you have to move that stuck energy because it does affect your health. It does affect you physically. It affects your relationships. It affects you at work. And can you imagine people bringing that into a relationship, bringing that into a marriage? People bring all that unhealed,
Yes.
trauma that people have
Baggage.
actually blacked out
Yes.
of it. They have blacked out. So this is, like I said, this is it's just not the, like I said, the brand. It's the whole. That's what we call holistic health.
Yes.
Right.
It's the yoga. It's the addressing, our trauma. It's getting below the surface, of the trauma. So this has been, I think this has just been wonderful. Now I know it's 8 o'clock.
Yes.
So I know that you have some books.
I do have one that just got released today.
Mhm.
I haven't picked up just yet, but the former book is Stand Up and Be Heard. I have my website and my contact information for those who are interested in doing a pre-order. Stand Up and Be Heard came out in 2016. I am a survivor of PTSD as a veteran's wife. My story is basically retold with steps on how I was able to exit a situation that began to feel unsafe, as Bobby was just sharing. You pick out people and you don't know what you're getting, but being a survivor of multiple wars of the United States, and doing the 20 years of the marriage, you accumulate a lot. And that's why I had us to begin with the baggage, and I got us to the chair to get to that bench to set those bags down so we can unpack each piece of that. And me having that courage is shared in that story. Stand Up and Be Heard, Volume 2 came out in 2016. I have a lot of other unpublished pieces as well, but the one that just came out today was my dissertation that I just got approved on and passed, and so that's ready. And I also created a training manual to train people, and I know how to modify those trainings. Like today was 100% modified for the adult, where my actual training is training the trainer to prepare teachers, because we're giving so much damage to our students and how they're reacting. We need to train our parents on how to be prepared for these teachers bringing their kids back safely. And whether you are a parent, grandparent, guardian, caregiver, just an auntie, whatever your role is, you could step up in being that advocate. That's something that I would love to see take off, in addition to some healing circle work that incorporates the yoga movements. And so that's pretty much what you'll find on imresilient.net. I do have a Facebook group, about 40 something people, just for a trauma support group that you can find on Facebook through that website as well. And so feel free to give me a call or an email to that link as well. I will put my email in here now that I just realized I didn't put it in here. Oh, I'm on the wrong computer. Okay.
Yeah, and I also have Dr. Lane's information. I was just thinking, Dr. Lane, it's so good to reconnect with you, because it's been so many years when we was with Wolsey together. Damani, do you remember?
Oh yeah.
Dr. Lane from Wolsey. She's leveled up, right? They say, isn't that the term, leveled up? Because now it's been so many years we didn't see each other. Now this is able to, reconnect, and this feels wonderful that that we're all on the same journey, because I believe African Americans, we know that there's no health without mental health. Period. There's no health. It's got to be mind, body, and spirit. So
I know it was one of the first things we the 10 virtues: control of thought, control of action, devotion to purpose. To me, it seemed like we got to really use our culture I know culture control, short definition of culture, it directs the collective behavior of a people. Culture unifies, it organizes, it's political, it's ideological. And
Absolutely.
I know, and Dr. Marimba Ani says we need to construct an African-centered paradigm that's modeled for our thinking.
Yes.
It's
And get
modeled
back
for
on
our
that.
thinking.
Dr. Obadashaka
And,
talks about it as well.
and like you, Dr. Land, we got to move it to a conscious level. She
Yes.
said we got to move it to a conscious level, and you know, move our understanding of life to a conscious level and operate from that paradigm. Yeah.
And we got to do it through visualization. So it's just like that mask wearing on the airplane. If you don't put your mask on first, you can't help, you know, anyone else outside of that. So it's like self-care is self-love, and we got to promote that. And so I now know how to ask for help, where 7-8 years ago, that was all about pride. And, you know, pride may pay your bills and make you have your chest poked out. But when you have baggage, like we unpacked earlier, and you have coworkers that bust out into tears when you say, put the bags down, you got teenagers that are afraid to put down the bags because they're filled with so much anger and venom, especially our young girls. I've never seen so much over the years in special education, and there's a lot of brokenness. And so we gotta re-heal that. And like you said, Brother Damani, it's the culture conversation, but more importantly, it's been fragmented and re-fed to us. And I don't want to get too political about that, because we need to change that narrative as well as what we are going back into our school systems and what is being told or not told, and upholding that. And so we as parents need to take that ownership. As I used to tell my children, yes, you go to school, but I am still your first primary teacher. And until we rule out the gospel, it is not the gospel. That's why we have all this technology to investigate. And I feel so fortunate and honored to have this full circle of experience with you all, invite me to the table. And even my great grandmother that you see the image of down there, Susan Merritt, was 87 years old when she passed, was liberated at 16 years old as a slave. I found that out before my dissertation, and during my dissertation found out about this is all my paternal father, mother's side, that there was also enslavement of my father's side, and that the indigenous Native Americans had enslaved him as a Cherokees. And so that was a whole nother dissertation I could have written just on those levels of trauma, and breaking those cycles of awareness is having this dialogue and being safe and comfortable to do it. And Hotep, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This is Sankofa for us.
Thank you.
Bobby, we can't hear you.
Okay, then I really want to thank you again, Dr. Lane, for your time. I want to thank all the attendees that came out with time, for your, I say for your time and for your energy, for being present here, because this was a very, very important workshop, you know. So
Yeah.
I'm going to sign off now, not unless anyone has a very last comment, but I do want to respect the time. It's 8:07. Okay, all righty. I guess we can go
I'm
ahead.
going to say thank you. And
adjourn.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Lane.
You're
Mhm.
welcome.
Yeah, you really have a holistic, you really see the whole picture.
Right.
Yeah, you really see the whole picture. Yeah. And so it's called African Americans for Balanced Health.
Yes.
Thank you for having the courage to
have you
show
back.
up to do that.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yes,
We got to
yes.
have you to do some workshops at the African market.
Absolutely. You
Oh,
keep
that'd be a
warm.
great idea.
I've
That'd be
actually been
great.
wanting to do that for quite some time. So you let me know when you have set up some collaborative moments, and I'd be willing to even donate some of my time towards that cause, because I know that we need it more than ever, for sure. Even if it's just
Right.
one side of the month, I'd be more than happy to do some workshops where it's integrative and interactive, a little bit more interactive, because there was a lot
Right.
to unpack. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, great.
okay.
All right.
Okay.
Y'all take care. Have a safe
too.
night.
Okay,
and
thank
be
you.
All right,
blessed.
y'all take care.
Okay, continue to breathe and
Night.
get lots of water for the rest of the night as you've done some of those movements, okay?
Okay.
Right.
All right.
I'm gonna stop the recording.